The unknown aspects of Egyptian history are among the most intriguing civilizations for contemporary people. This curiosity is to such an extent that 70% of all archaeological studies worldwide are conducted on Egyptian soil. Egypt, though initially a subject of interest primarily for European societies during the Roman Empire period, became a focal point of detailed research and the establishment of Egyptology when Napoleon Bonaparte invaded Egypt at the end of the 18th century, proclaiming to his soldiers, 40 centuries are looking down upon you, and initiating studies on the pyramids. Before the video, if you subscribe to the channel, you will make me really happy. Now we can continue the video. This Egyptian civilization has significantly influenced both our contemporary religious beliefs and social lives. In this video, we will partially examine these influences on the history of civilizations. When we look at the history of civilizations, we observe that the first advanced civilizations of humanity were naturally established along the banks of rivers, mainly near water sources. For example, the Sumerian civilization between the Tigris and Euphrates rivers in Mesopotamia, the Chinese civilization around the Yellow and Yangtze rivers, and the Indian civilization along the Indus and Ganges rivers. The fundamental reason for this is that the availability of abundant food and drink, the basic requirement for human survival, was prevalent in these areas. Additionally, agriculture could be practiced most efficiently along the riverbanks. Water remains the primary source of sustenance for humanity today, just as it was in the past. Similar to other civilizations, Egypt also emerged as a civilization formed by people settled around the Nile River. The Egyptian civilization has been one of the magnificent gifts of the Nile River to us. However, Egypt has another geographical advantage that could be considered fortunate. Its surroundings are covered with vast deserts, providing natural protection against external attacks. This isolation allowed the society to continue developing for thousands of years, shielded from the devastations of external conflicts. Egypt owes this distinctiveness and depth to its geographical features. Now, let's delve into what this civilization is and who composed it. Around 3150 BCE, although the exact date is uncertain, there is a consensus on the existence of the first pharaoh who unified Upper and Lower Egypt, believed to be a king named Narmer. This pharaoh successfully united all Egyptians, and his name, along with that of his father, has been featured in many films. During the time of the pharaohs, around 3150 BCE, the people of Egypt had advanced agriculture and had learned to control the floods of the Nile throughout the year. The unification of Upper and Lower Egypt by the pharaohs did not happen instantly. Many cities in Egypt had long been culturally interconnected and even united, forming a common Egyptian culture throughout the country. The only need was for a powerful authority to gather these city-states under a single flag, and King Narmer achieved this. Throughout Egyptian history, 190 pharaohs ruled under various dynasties. The history of Egypt is divided into different periods, and the first period involves the unification of Egypt and the formation of the foundations of Egyptian culture, as we briefly examined. The essential process begins after this because the first pyramid was built in this new kingdom, around 2600 BCE, by someone named Imhotep. To understand Egyptian culture and history, it is crucial to know about Imhotep. He was one of the most enigmatic and knowledgeable figures of that time, serving as the vizier of an Egyptian pharaoh and building the first pyramid. His name means "he who comes in peace," and he was also a writer, architect, engineer, priest, sculptor, and astronomer. Imhotep is considered a key figure in laying the scientific foundation of Egyptian culture. The first pyramid, designed as a step pyramid, was constructed based on sacred triangle logic. The reason for designing a pyramid as a triangle is rooted in the belief that pharaohs needed the sacred triangle when ascending to the heavens. Therefore, subsequent pyramids were consistently designed in a triangular shape. In summary, we can say that the Egyptian pyramids are crucial steps in the scientific and religious beliefs of Egypt, and Imhotep is a mysterious figure whose tomb has never been found. However, in the periods following the motif, pyramids began to be constructed with a flat outer surface rather than in a step-like fashion. The interiors of these pyramids are filled with various booby traps, dark corridors, mazes, and cursed hieroglyphs. Their locations are often prepared in a way that aligns with the stars in the sky. Each square is equipped with mathematical precision. Pyramid construction constitutes one of the fundamental economic activities in Egypt and is a cornerstone that shapes Egyptian civilization. Throughout history, numerous legendary facts have been proposed regarding pyramid construction. For instance, the Great Pyramid of Giza, considered one of the 7 wonders of the world, used at least 3 million stone blocks, each weighing a minimum of 2.5 tons. The question of how the ancient Egyptians transported these massive stones, until recently, did not have a definitive answer. Various beliefs, such as the assistance of aliens or jinn, were entertained. However, these claims largely stemmed from tourist-oriented propaganda. The mystery of how the stones were transported was unresolved until ancient quarries were discovered near the pyramids, indicating that these blocks were brought from a close distance. The transportation process involved long ramps where hundreds of people, with the help of mud, grease, and animals, moved the stones. One unanswered question remains in the construction of pyramids today: the mystery of the King's Chamber in the Great Pyramid. The massive granite stones in the King's Chamber weigh between 25 and 85 tons, and they were transported by ships from a region 500 miles away. The organization responsible for transporting these 80-ton stones by ship remains an open question. However, there is no need to resort to supernatural explanations such as the involvement of genies or aliens. Don't exaggerate the size of an 80-ton stone in your mind. While it may seem large individually, the area it covers is not that extensive. Various theories suggest methods for transporting these stones, and experiments are conducted to recreate these methods under conditions similar to those of ancient times. In the construction of pyramids, thousands of people were involved in a construction process that spanned many years. Therefore, new settlements, hands, were established near the pyramids. Workers, not slaves as commonly portrayed in Hollywood films with lashings and starvation, were engaged in the construction. It is essential to set aside the concept of slavery depicted in movies, as it does not accurately represent the reality of the time. Because the Egyptian civilization was aware of the importance of workers, or rather, laborers, and understood that taking good care of them was crucial for the prosperity of the entire country, they treated them well. In fact, they had a better workers' union than many countries today. They even had schools in their cities. Intelligent slave children could advance classes after attending these schools, and they could take on significant roles nationwide. Through excavations in the Pisa region, it has been definitively proven that the idea of whipping workers was entirely mythical. Weekly and annual leaves, health insurance, organized homes, regular wages, daily allowances, and even the right to seek justice in courts were available to the workers. During the time of Pharaoh Ramses III, when the solar allowance was reduced, workers even went on strike, marking the first known workers' protest in history. Many court records from that time have survived to the present day. Therefore, we have detailed insights into their loss. For example, there is a record where the powers of a master who treated a worker unjustly were revoked. Another record tells of the punishment given to a young man who committed adultery with a married woman and had a criminal record for various crimes, including theft. He was sentenced to 20 lashes. Harsh penalties were generally left to the conscience and discretion of the government rather than being explicitly stated in the Constitution. For instance, some court records show that a married woman involved in adultery faced no punishment, while in other records, she received a punishment, such as having her nose cut off. Cutting off the nose was such a common punishment in Egyptian history that there was even a village called Nose Cut, where those who underwent this penalty would settle, usually outcast from society. Offenders like rapists faced punishments such as lashes, exile, imprisonment, or castration. theft was punished by cutting off the hand or imprisonment for a certain period. After a while, these laws were adopted by the Jews, forming the basis of many legal systems in various religions. The Egyptians were the first community to administer the punishment of cutting off the hand for theft. The Jews living in the land of Egypt almost entirely adopted these laws. Expenses for marriage and housing were covered by the state. Particularly for slaves working on pyramid construction, houses dedicated to them were provided. The conditions of workers stimulated the country's economy, facilitating the movement of money within the economy. Pyramids held spiritual significance as places where pharaohs transitioned to the afterlife. Often, both the pharaoh and the queen were buried in the same pyramid because both the woman's value and marriage held significant importance in Egyptian civilization. In ancient Egypt, marriages were mostly monogamous. Married couples would make a marriage contract, and if either party did not adhere to it, they could request a divorce. Even engagement and trial marriages existed to allow couples to get to know each other. These trial marriages could last for a few months or years. If the couple did not get along, they would be considered never to have been married. In the case of divorce, if the woman sought it, she would receive compensation, and if the man sought it, he would pay compensation. There is also an interesting marriage method. Especially within the dynasty family, siblings could marry each other. Although we currently find this relationship form, known as incest, disturbing, it was a common practice to prevent the power of the pharaoh family, believed to carry divine blood, from growing too much. For example, Cleopatra, known as the last pharaoh, was married to her 10-year-old brother. In Egypt, incest has more religious and political reasons. Sometimes, they would choose not their male children but their daughters as heirs. This could be because the daughters were born from their favorite spouses or from spouses of their own pharaoh lineage. In such cases, one of the male children could marry the queen, his sister, to become a co-ruler. Sibling marriages were also common within the palace aristocracy, where concerns about protection played a significant role. Women had equal rights with men both legally and economically. Laws were impartial between a woman and a man when issuing judgments. In the Egyptian civilization, there were no obstacles for women to participate in political, religious, or administrative activities. According to Egypt's political system, women also had the right to ascend the throne. Therefore, throughout ancient Egyptian history, we see many women as pharaohs. Women had equal rights in both religious and social matters, and they held significant positions in society. Most hieroglyphics on pyramids depict pharaohs with their spouses, usually emphasizing the level of their work. These Egyptian nobles had all body hair removed. This practice was primarily seen as a matter of cleanliness, considering the abundance of fleas and mosquitoes in the world of the Nile River. Everyone, men and women alike, shaved their hair and wore wigs instead. The most common type of footwear used by almost everyone, including pharaohs, was sandals. This choice was due to the hot climate. Egyptians, almost universally, used makeup, giving great importance to cosmetics, including eye makeup. This was because, given the variety of insects and mosquitoes in the Nile River's world, there was always a possibility of infection. These makeup materials were made from special mixtures by Egyptian doctors, providing protection against infections and mosquitoes. Additionally, they believed in the protection of the gods, as these makeup materials were present in the figures of the gods. Both men and women throughout Egypt considered makeup highly important. Therefore, the civilization of Egypt has been shaped by many beauty sciences. They observed the sky and gained knowledge in various fields, such as determining directions, seasonal information, and the past, similar to this topic. They created a solar-based calendar that consists of 365 days and 12 months, with each month having 30 days. They celebrated the 5-day difference as festival days. They advanced in mathematics and geometry by controlling floods and creating irrigation systems. The construction of pyramids led to the discovery of the exact value of pi through a formula. Male children underwent circumcision, and until the age of 12, they shaved their heads, leaving a thin strand of hair on top. They mostly used a soft soap made from animal fat and limestone dust for washing. Both genders shaved their entire bodies to stay clean. Fragrant ointments, perfumes, or oils were used to eliminate bad odors and soften the skin. Workers received compensation such as oil and ointments weekly. The staple diet included bread, along with vegetables like onions, garlic, fruits like dates and figs, and preserved or dried fish and poultry, either cooked in clay pots or grilled. They learned about pulse control and cough examination, and Egyptian women used tampons for protection during pregnancy, according to legend. The use of tampons by Egyptian women is similar to contemporary sanitary pads. Egyptians were familiar with dental fillings, and doctors took measures to prevent infections. Prosthetic body parts, such as a wooden foot and a thumb, existed, and state-controlled medicines were administered. The use of drugs in ancient Egypt was under state control, with doctors affiliated with an institution called House of Life, part of a temple, receiving special training. These institutions were open to everyone seeking treatment. During their time, the Egyptians received better health care than all other societies worldwide. Workers had health insurance, and the employer or the state covered the health expenses of employees and the top priority. I won't go into surgery because the Egyptians were highly advanced in surgical techniques, alleviating patients' pain using various drugs during surgeries. Thanks to the mummification technique, medical science was highly developed in Egypt. Additionally, during the construction of the pyramids, accidents contributed to the advancement of this science. Egyptians were also known for their love of music, using a 7-note scale that can be seen in relief images that have survived to this day. The medical issues Egyptians worked on were often directly related to environmental factors. Living in close proximity to a significant portion of the population led to problems such as waste disposal. Presence of aggressive wild animals like crocodiles and hippos posed a general threat. Heavy labor throughout life, exerting significant pressure on joints and the spine, resulted in traumatic injuries. Wars also created significant pressure on the population. The use of cavities in small but hard particles worn down teeth and served as a defense against infections. Consuming sugar-rich foods by the affluent class led to gum diseases. Despite depictions of well-proportioned body structures in tomb walls, excess weight in mummified children in the tombs of the wealthy class indicates widespread overeating. The life expectancy for adults was around 35 for men and sitting for women. However, reaching adulthood was challenging, with 1/3 of the population dying in childhood. Ancient Egyptian healers prevented and treated various medical issues, and the most famous among them is Imhotep, mentioned earlier. The Greeks' historian Herodotus expressed astonishment at the specialized nature of Egyptian medicine. Some doctors specialized in only the head or stomach, and these specialists existed in medical schools providing medical education. The first professional female doctors were also Egyptians. The average height of Egyptian men during that period was around 1.63, while in Central Asia it was 1.58, and in Europe it was around 1.66. This lower height was due to lower living standards and the absence of various food products. The average height has been steadily increasing worldwide, even in modern-day Turkey, over the last 90 years. Now, here's an interesting piece of information. For the Egyptians, mathematics was crucial. Math competitions were organized in the Attic civilization, highlighting the importance of mathematics for an educated Egyptian. This significance of mathematics is explicitly mentioned in a letter from the Old Kingdom period. In this document, the author suggests a competition to the addressee, proposing a competition topic related to daily calculations about land, labor, and grain imagined in those years. The idea of an organized knowledge competition itself is pleasant, and the Egyptians had a polytheistic belief system. Egyptian gods were believed to intervene in both the order of nature and the lives of people. Traditionally, foreigners were believed to be outside the divine order. So this divine influence primarily affected Egypt and its people. Ancient Egyptian religion, an integral part of ancient Egyptian society, was a polytheistic and complex belief system. This belief system is so complex that we see significant differences between the perspective of the elite class towards the gods and the perspective of the common people. We will briefly touch on this complex subject. For the Egyptians, religion was the most important aspect of life, and the moon was already considered the most religious people in the world. Yes, this belief system is so complex that we see significant differences between the perspective of the elite class towards the gods and the perspective of the common people. We will briefly touch on this complex subject. For the Egyptians, religion was the most important aspect of life, and the moon was already considered the most religious people in the world. Although the exact number of gods and goddesses known by name is about 1,500, and the number of those who voted and their origins is something we will never fully know. Archaeological evidence has provided meaningful clues about the birth of Egyptian gods. Depictions of gods on coffins indicate a culture that believed in the gods as an integral part of the world, capable of living and dying, sharing the same fate as the universe's other elements. In the end, like other elements of creation, gods would also be exhausted over time, representing a remnant of Egypt. Speaking more broadly, the major gods of Egypt include Osiris, Isis, and their son Horus, forming a trinity. Myths about this trinity, composed of you, yourself, and the rooster, involve ancient creation and establishment concepts. Later, these motifs found their way into Christianity. Now, let's take a look at an interesting deity, Amon-Ra, the chief deity and the first god in the first style. He is considered the god of all gods. His consort is Amunet, and together they are stylized as sacred animals, a ram and a goose, respectively. Amon-Ra is also known as the Hidden One, meaning a famous temple in Karnak, one of the world's largest religious structures. Egyptians believed Amon-Ra was the unseen creative force in the vast depths of the heavenly world and the fundamental force of life in the underworld. In worship dedicated to Amon, the final word would be Amon, or, in other words, Amen. Despite that, the term Amen might sound familiar to us, as it has entered almost all Abrahamic religions and is used after prayers to signify affirmation and completion. Christians say Amen, and Muslims also say Amin. Similar to what the Egyptians did, it has naturally found its way into religions as a gift from the Egyptians. Interestingly, the word Amen does not appear anywhere in the Quran. It first entered Christianity as Amen and later into Islam as Amin. Now, let's explore an interesting pharaoh, Akhenaton, the servant of Aten. Originally born as a pharaoh who believed in the Amon religion, he later established one of the world's first monotheistic religions known as Atenism, symbolizing the sun as the only god. The depictions commissioned by Akhenaton clearly show his acceptance of the sun as the sole god. He banned the powerful Amon priests in the country to diminish the influence of Amonism, leading to an internal conflict that initiated one of Egypt's most complex and bloody periods. During these years, Egypt experienced one of its most complicated and turbulent periods. Akhenaton's unsuccessful rule caused upheaval in the country, even leading to a period of chaos known as the Amarna period, which ultimately resulted in the division of the country. Later on, believers in the classic Egyptian religion gained dominance, and the Aten, which saw the sun as the only god, was eradicated. It's claimed that Akhenaton, who advocated for the precursor of monotheistic religions, might have influenced the later transformation of Atenism into Judaism. This view is supported by many scholars, including Sigmund Freud, who explained his views in his book Moses and Monotheism. Freud proposed that Moses, along with Akhenaton's followers, had to leave Egypt due to their beliefs in Atenism, and Moses claimed to be another man with a different name. Freud, in his work, also argues that the Jewish tradition of circumcision originated in Egypt. He points out that circumcision had long been practiced in Egypt and was known to be unique to ancient Egypt, with no other people in the Eastern Mediterranean following this tradition. Freud suggests that scenes from Babylonians and Sumerians depict them without circumcision. He concludes that if Moses gave not only a religion but also the commandment of circumcision to the Jews, then Moses was likely not a Jew but an Egyptian. In this case, the religion Moses brought was probably an Egyptian religion, and when compared to the prevalent religions, it matched Atenism in some crucial aspects. Other Egyptian scholars also emphasize the direct connections between Judaism and Semitic religious customs. For the Egyptians, the greatest challenge came not from their neighbors but from the invaders who came from the north. Although invasions from the Aegean Islands had long-lasting effects on the Egyptian state, the first formidable group they encountered was the Hittites, an Anatolian civilization with an uncertain origin and destiny. The Hittites mysteriously rose to power, remained influential for many years, and established a civilization with profound and lasting impacts that would reach the present day. The conflict between the two powerful civilizations was both a struggle for supremacy and an attempt to dominate the Eastern Mediterranean. After engaging in a prolonged war, the Battle of Kadesh ended inconclusively, leading to the Kadesh Treaty, which shifted hostilities from the battlefield to politics. During this period, Pharaoh Ramses II, known for his impressive height of around 7 feet, became one of the most celebrated pharaohs. Ramses II, a devout follower of Amon, is acknowledged for leading Egypt through a period of prosperity. Due to his achievements, he received numerous titles from the people, including the one who physically shaped ancient Egypt. Ramses II constructed new cities, capitals, and numerous temples. One of his most notable constructions is the Great Temple of Abu Simbel, dedicated to his wife Nefertari, which remains one of the largest rock-cut temples created by human hands. Despite the claims by some Jews and Muslims that Ramses II was the pharaoh during the time of the prophet Moses, there is no evidence supporting such events in Ramses's well-documented life. Many consider Ramses II a significant figure, but the stories of Moses parting the Red Sea or encountering plagues are not present in the detailed records of Ramses's life and reign. Inscriptions in the Abydos Temple indicate the number of Ramses II's children, 59 sons and 60 daughters from legal wives and concubines, suggesting no status difference among children from different mothers. The Amarna tablets, discovered during the construction of the Temple of Learning in Sumer, indicate that Ramses II's close friend and chief scribe, Amini, dedicated his life to writing about Ramses until his death at the age of 90. In summary, we know almost everything about the great pharaoh Ramses II. However, there is no evidence of him engaging in debates with prophets or witnessing the events described in religious texts. Before discussing Cleopatra, an important figure in Egypt, it's crucial to mention Alexander the Great, one of the greatest rulers in history. Alexander, often considered one of the two greatest rulers alongside Genghis Khan, conquered Persian territories, advanced into the heart of India, and even reached as far as Egypt. Unlike an invader in Egypt, he was welcomed as a god by the Egyptian people and was referred to as Alexander the God. Now, let's move on to Cleopatra after recognizing the significance of Alexander. Alexander the Great conquered Egypt and established the capital, Alexandria. During his rule, he implemented a governance system suitable for Egypt, gaining the affection of the people. Upon leaving, he entrusted the administration to his general, Ptolemy, forming the Ptolemaic dynasty. In this era, a cultural exchange between Greek and Egyptian cultures occurred, and the Greek and Egyptian gods became intertwined. Cleopatra, the last pharaoh from the Ptolemaic dynasty, was married to her younger brother, who was sent into exile in Africa by his advisors. At that time, the Roman general Julius Caesar, caught in the midst of the Roman Civil War, came to Egypt. Witnessing the chaos in the Egyptian government and facing mockery from a young Egyptian child, Caesar decided to change the leadership. According to legend, Roman soldiers presented Cleopatra to Caesar rolled up in a carpet, and she emerged from it before him. Over time, Caesar became enamored by Cleopatra's intelligence. They married and had several children. Cleopatra, proficient in 8 languages and well-versed in ancient Greek and Egyptian languages, was not just a wealthy heiress but a scholar capable of discussing texts with philosophers. After Caesar's assassination in the Roman Senate, Mark Antony, Caesar's closest ally, came to Egypt to establish a new government and eliminate Caesar's rival, Octavian. Mark Antony and Cleopatra fell in love, embarking on incredible adventures together. However, facing defeat against Octavian's forces, Mark Antony and Cleopatra chose to end their lives through suicide. Antony followed the Roman military tradition and stabbed himself, while Cleopatra, being an Egyptian, used snake venom. With their deaths, the era of pharaohs in Egypt concluded, giving way to Roman rule. When Octavian arrived in Egypt, he expressed interest in seeing the tomb of Alexander the Great. However, he was told that they could show him the tombs of other kings as well. Octavian, emphasizing that he came to see kings, not ordinary men, only visited the tomb of Alexander the Great. Thank you very much for watching the video until the end. If you like and subscribe to the video, you will make me very happy. Thank you again.